helping us learn to love music. They help to spark a love for listening to notes and voices and rhythms that continues to enrich our lives even today. I bet your kids feel the same way about...
Live from New York, this is AC Lowe, and this is the AC Lowe Show, broadcasting over the City World Radio Network. We broadcast live to you. I say live from 132 Mulberry Street in the heart of Little Italy. We broadcast from Umberto's Clam House to the entire world. The entire world. We're in New York City, as you know, for all of our regular listeners, and we have a power-packed show tonight with so many different guests. We don't know which one to talk to first, but we've made some decisions here prior to the show, and we're going to decide. I am joined tonight by my special co-host, who was the host of his own radio program here on City World Radio, the premier flagship program of City World Radio, the inimitable Bill Russo. Hello, Bill. How are you?
Well, thank you, Anthony. It's good to be on your show this evening. You have a great lineup tonight, and tell our guests, tell our audience who your guests are.
Now, as you know, this is on YouTube because you're watching us. You wouldn't realize, but I'm just going to let our radio listeners know that simultaneously we record this program for YouTube, and it'll be up there tomorrow morning. You were hearing the show live over www.cityworldradio.com. Just go there, click the live microphone to listen live. Listen on your cell phone, listen on your iPhone, listen on your computer, your laptop, listen on everything except your radio. That's
just
an anathema.
Listen.
We don't listen
and
on
now you
radio.
can watch.
Okay, we did all of that. I have a couple of sales promos, but we'll move on. We have to move quickly. We have this evening two wonderful guests. Our old friend, she's not old, but she's a friend a long time.
For correcting that.
Diane Hawkins. I was just telling her how easily I solved her problem by being an elderly person myself. Hello, Diane. How are you? It's wonderful to have you on the program.
How are you doing? And
I'm doing very well.
To be here again.
And at your recommendation, I have to my left, which I guess if you're watching this, I guess it is to my right, is Frank Miele. How are you, Frank? Welcome to the program.
I'm fine. Happy to be here.
Frank, Diane told me that you've written a book.
I have.
And if you could just come up to the microphone a little bit, Frank.
Sure.
Come up a little bit more.
Okay.
Good. Okay, and we can hear you. All right. And so what is the book about?
Well, the book is about the relationship between my son and me, a relationship that's been broken as a result of the separation of our one family into two. Over a period of years, my son has moved away from me, and I have not seen him as a consequence for the last 2.5 years. The title of the book is Humpty Dumpty, A Child's Conundrum. When one family splits and becomes two, a child is often separated from one of his two parents, and that separation creates a psychological barrier or a wall between the child and the parent from whom he's separated. And when confronting the child with the difficult problem of how to continue to love the parent from whom he's separated without alienating the parent on whom he is wholly dependent, and when parental alienation is thrown into the mix, the relationship between the child and the parent from whom he's separated will break into pieces, just like Humpty Dumpty in his great fall, and that relationship cannot be put back together again. And that pretty much explains what's happened between my son and me.
What you've done is show concisely a problem that affects millions of families across this country and actually across the world. And it's a sad, certainly a sad thing. And when we encounter it, no one knows how to deal with it because we don't have any practice. So how did you deal with this whole...
Well, it was cathartic for me. I actually start writing... When I started writing, I had not intended to write a book. I intended to write the memoirs of my early childhood. There are things in my childhood that I thought Alexander would never comprehend. I lived on a street in Newark with tenement houses and factories. Peddlers used to go by with horse-drawn carriages selling fruits and vegetables. My grandfather, who lived upstairs from me, used to send me downstairs with a broom and shovel to scoop up the horse manure on the block for his garden. That's something.
Now hold on a second, Frank. I understand. I know just what you're talking about because I was a New York City sanitation worker, and I followed many a parade horse in my time. So, but I think people of the present generation could never understand that some of these things were done routinely.
That's why I was writing the memoirs about my early childhood. And after I got done writing, I didn't read it for several months. And when I went back to read it, I realized that I not only recounted things that happened early in my childhood, but I started writing about Alexander. And when I realized I started writing about my son, I knew there was a lot more I had to say about it. And so I continued to write and eventually wrote what has become a published book.
Now, you had no intention to write about that initially, only to write about some of your about the things in your life.
Exactly right.
And then at some point it evolved to where you started talking about this particular issue.
Well,
was this? I would guess that this was an issue for you for a very long time.
It was
from the time of your separation.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
What happened? I had an art gallery at the time I was writing. And one of my friends, a neighbor who lived down the street, was Tom Wolfe, the author. And Tom used to stop in my gallery frequently just to chat. And we'd spend time talking about art, talking about books, talking about his books. And one day he stopped in and said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Every time I pass, it looks like you're busy at work on the computer, as if you were writing a book." I said, "Well, I have been writing, Tom." And he said, "Would you mind if I read what you're writing?" And he read about 40 or 50 pages of the book, and when he got done, he said, "You know, you ought to try to get this published. It would help a lot of kids." He said, "Often parents are unaware of the impact of their conduct on the lives of their children." He said, "But what you read about in books about divorce is the angst of a partner against his or her former partner with very little concern for the impact of their conduct on the lives of their children." He said, "This is a book that should be published."
More often, many adults are the results of what they experienced in childhood. And sometimes when you speak to parents about in separated families, and there are so many, I'm going to speak to that in a moment, they will tell you, "Oh yeah, the kids are fine. They're fine with it." But that's rarely true in my experience. Just real quick, I was married for quite some time. I got married young, and my wife passed away at a very young age. And I was concerned about my children in class with no mother. And I was the father, but I can't be no one can be both. The child deserves and needs both, I believe. Anyway, my son said to me, "Dad, don't worry. Everybody in the class only has one parent." Everybody in the class. Now, this is about 25 years ago. Yeah. And his comment to me was that everyone in his class had either mother or father,
That's
and
even
all
more true
as
now.
a result of divorce.
It's even more true now.
And I guess that in some way they found some comradeship at school.
Sure.
Because they had their contemporaries, their peers, experiencing pretty much the same thing.
So, Frank, what were the circumstances leading up to the separation that resulted in the separation, and how did that affect your son?
Well, my son's mother left me not too long after his birth. I didn't realize at the time, but when I became a father, our relationship changed. I learned a year or two later that it changed because I became a father. She had been abused by her father as a child. I ran away from home at the age of 16 because she feared her father and hated him. Never got help for her problem. And consequently, Alexander has been told all of his life that fathers are to be feared and hated.
So you raised Alexander, your son?
No.
Okay.
She sued me for exclusive custody. The judge, a female judge, was shocked that a parent would sue another parent for exclusive custody, given the fact that there were no allegations of mistreatment or abuse or abandonment. And consequently, I was awarded joint custody. I counterclaimed in kind, K-I-N-D. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be kind to Alexander and to his mother, and I did not seek exclusive custody, but I sought joint custody. And when I was awarded joint custody, the order also prohibited either of us from moving out of state or changing his name. A short while after that order came down, his mother kidnapped him, moved to Minnesota in violation of the court order, and a few years later changed his name from his surname, my name, to her surname, which ironically is the name of the man who abused her, and he's now known by that name.
And did you know this as it was happening, or you had to learn retroactive?
I learned this several years after our separation.
How long were you separated initially?